With regards to addictions, that's why I started my question by saying that I think I'm seeking some of your approval, is because I actually, I thought I went to quite great lengths to actually work on my addictions, because I went twice to the desert, 2 weeks on my own without food, cigarette, coffee and means of communication, just to fight my addictions. As a result, I gave up smoking and drinking coffee, so half of my addictions, let's say.
No, that's not half of your addictions.
No, I mean the ones that
In fact,
because
to be honest with you,
I had set myself the goal of food, computer, smoking and coffee.
Yeah.
So
Now,
I
what
gave
you've
up
just
smoking
listed,
and coffee.
but what you've just listed is all your physical addictions.
Yes, absolutely. At least to start with that.
Well, they mean almost nothing in comparison to your emotional addictions. Your emotional addictions are much higher and greater than your physical addictions. In fact, all of your physical addictions are driven by your emotional addictions. So when you remove a physical addiction, while you may feel like you've addressed the issue, you haven't actually addressed the issue yet. You only can address the issue by addressing the emotion that drove the physical addiction.
That's why I went to the desert and I thought, I won't eat, so I'll see what it feels like being very hungry and very angry about it. So, well, I worked a lot in the desert. I mean, lots of fear and shame and stuff came up, and I was, as I had nothing else to do because I was on my own virtually, I worked on that all the time, twice. So it was almost a month.
I need to stop you.
Yeah.
Because can you feel your anger at me even just saying that to you? Because I can.
I'm not telling you that I'm through, but I'm just trying to, with regards to this joy and pleasure, because after that I thought I received some very nice answers to my questions, and now I'm doubting that they were any answers at all.
I agree. I would doubt that there were any answers at all. Because you still have the emotional addictions in place. And while those emotional addictions in place, that's the focus. The spirits all work on your emotional addictions. That's what they're focused on. They see them as colours coming out of your spirit form that they can manipulate and control, because they know that you will be manipulated and controlled by certain things. And it's interesting that when I point that out to you, the first feeling you have is anger, which you still have if you're honest with yourself right as I'm speaking. And this is telling you that there are underlying fears that you have that you've yet to even go near and face. And you want it to all be over in a few weeks.
No, that's not true.
No, it is.
It's
not a question.
Because I know that I've got heaps of anger still and heaps of fears, but at least I thought I had achieved at least something, because I thought that what I had done was, compared to nothing, quite a lot.
Well, compared to nothing, it possibly was quite a lot, but there is a long way to go. What a lot of people don't realise is that how long have you been alive now?
40 plus years.
You're not going to tell me exactly.
41.
41, okay. So 41 years you've been alive. Over that period of time, how many thousands of emotions do you think you've suppressed?
All of them.
All of them, pretty much, right? The majority of us in the Western world in particular have suppressed the majority of our emotions. And that began from the time that we were just little children. Our parents suppressed them and tried to control them and manipulated them and so forth. You've got 41 years of suppressed emotions to feel, because they're all within you, and the only way they're going to get out of you is by feeling them. Right? Now, 41 years of suppressed emotions, assuming, let's say, we suppressed one emotion a week. Shall we make that assumption? And usually it's a lot more than that we suppress. But let's say it's one emotion a week. So 41 by 52, right? Emotions. That's over 2,000, yes? Emotions that we're going to have to feel to the depth that we didn't feel them before. Now, you're not going to accomplish that in 1 week, 2 week, 5 week, 1 year. It's very highly unlikely you'll accomplish it in a year, 2 years, 3 years. You might accomplish it in 10 or 15 years, perhaps. And in fact, it is possible to accomplish it in 10 years or so. if you really dedicate in addressing the issue emotionally. But you're not going to accomplish it in 2 weeks in the desert. That's the reality. But many of us want to believe that the reality is we should be able to. And then what happens is we get angry with God, and we get angry with the people who told us that we should deal with our emotions, and we get angry with pretty much anyone we can get angry with because we want it to be over. And wanting something to be over is not conducive to helping you deal with things emotionally. So we need to come to accept that we have a unique experience. You have a unique experience. It's only yours. You have 41 years times by how many emotions you suppressed every single week of those years to feel now as a result of what happened. And being angry about it is not going to help you feel them. What's going to help you feel them is having a lot more love for yourself than forcing yourself to go out in the desert to deal with an emotion, and caring for yourself enough to be willing to accept every single one of these emotions. Emotionally accept every single one of them, and accept that every single one of them is either the result of somebody else's actions towards yourself or your choices that were out of harmony with will, out of harmony with the loving use of your will. And some of the things have happened to you because of what other people did, in other words, and some of the things happened because of what you did in terms of the choices you made in your life. And all of them are going to have to be felt to the emotional causal level for them to be released. And that is not going to happen in a day or a week or a month or a year or probably even 10 years for most people who are living on earth. It can happen in a shorter period of time, but it's unlikely for most people because there's so much resistance inside of us. So every time you get angry, you're in resistance. Does that make sense? And that resistance stops you from actually feeling the underlying emotion. Now, you can express you can go and express the anger and everything, but at some point in the future you'll come to realise that actually all this anger is because I'm actually addicted to avoiding my fear. And it's my fear that I have to feel in the end. And most of us are so terrified of feeling fear that we'd rather be angry than feel fear. Because anger is a powerful place. It feels powerful, right? It makes us feel strong. But fear makes us feel weak. And so we want to avoid fear like the plague. We want to avoid it. That's the last thing we wish to do. And if you can understand that through your childhood in particular, but also all through your life, you've had so many fears that you've acted upon, you've now made decisions about them and so forth. And every single one of these things have compounded. And the spirits around you know how much you want to avoid it. And so what they do is they feed you things that you accept. Now, in the prayer, the Lord's Prayer that's in the Paget messages, not the one that's in the Bible, but the one we listed on our website that's in the Paget messages. In the prayer, there's a section about spirit influence, about avoiding the control and manipulation of spirits. Many of us don't wish to avoid it because we are so focused on wanting pleasure that as soon as we have a moment of pleasure in our life, we go to that thing without considering its long-term ethical stance, what's really going on. In other words, we refuse to consider what's really going on. We don't want to know most of the time. And so what we do is we take unethical decisions at that point, feeding our joy, describing to ourselves and saying to ourselves, actually, I'm doing this because it's bringing me joy, and that's the right thing to do. When the reality is, if we looked at the ethics involved with many of our choices and decisions, we would find that they are unloving. And this applies to ethics even with yourself. So when you went out in the desert for 2 weeks, you weren't being loving to yourself. Does that make sense? Because you're being hard on yourself. You're forcing yourself through things that you don't want to address. And so, of course, you're not going to get to the real causes. You're only going to deal with superficial issues like that. There are people that I know who have almost a competitive urge when they hear divine truth. Isn't that the case, darling? They're almost like, I'm going to do this as fast as possible, and I'm going to be faster than anybody else, and it's going to work great. And those kind of people never get to release anything because none of it's sincere. None of the work they do is sincere. They get overcloaked by spirits as a result, and before they know it, lots of things happen. Now, for the majority of people who begin this process, this is what actually happens. They start working on emotion that they believe is their own emotion. So this is the start. They believe their own emotion, but it's actually the emotion of spirits with them who are feeding their addictions. Then they get to a point where they realise that's what's happening, that they have to be far more real than what they thought they were being up until that point. And then they actually do start addressing and reducing the amount of emotions inside of their soul. However, a lot of people at that point have this thing happening. They get angry, resistive, that they have to do it, I don't want to have to do this is all bad. And then they go through moments where they do it and release something, but then they get angry again, and then, and they make choices and decisions in their anger, just as you're making a choice and decision right now to be angry with me, even though you don't realise it. And those decisions are harming the love that could come out of you. They're harming it, they're affecting it. Whereas if we chose to not do that, and we instead just chose to have this slow release of emotion, that is the true causal emotion, without having our addictions for pleasure being met, but rather focusing completely on the sincere addressing of particular things rather than forcing ourselves through it, what we finish up doing is releasing stuff, and we'll get to a better place in the end much more rapidly than we do it any other way. So what I would suggest to you is this. Look at why you are wanting to be so hard on yourself. Because you do want to be hard on yourself. And look at why. There's a reason why you want to be hard on yourself. And for the majority of people who are hard on themselves, the fear is so big that they want to just push their way through it rather than feel it. In other words, they want to get over it fast rather than just feel it. So my suggestion to you is let yourself look at why you're being hard on yourself and pushing yourself through things, and instead allow yourself to feel what the underlying reason is as to why you're hard on yourself. Right? And you'll find that there's fears that need to be released there.